What's happening, guys? It's Jeremy Blanton with RE/MAX Southern Shores, and today I wanted to take some time to talk about a recent change in law here in South Carolina that may change the entire process of buying and selling a property here in Myrtle Beach. What changed? Well, we're going to get into the details of it over the next few minutes here, but before I get into the new types of contract, let me first kind of take a step back and go over some of the history of this segment and what the big change that we had. It all has to do around repairs, inspections, and that segment of the contract. So let's get into this. So first, let's go back and talk about the past. In the past, the way that we used to do contracts here in South Carolina was using what was called the repair procedure. You've heard me do videos on it in the past. You may have even heard me mention the 5 components, those 5 things: the heating and cooling, the plumbing, the electrical, the structure, and the appliance. If something is defective in those 5 areas, you could ask for it to be repaired as a buyer. If you were selling a house, you were contractually obligated to take care of those things. But what we had found over the years is that there became these gray areas, things like a chipped tile on the floor or a foggy window. That, is it covered? Is it something that should be repaired? Or like I had one once that came up, it was about a door. It was a double pane door and one of the panes was broken out. They said this door was still perfectly fine and working, it just wasn't to its optimal thing, and my buyer had to basically accept it that way. Well, the foggy windows was such a debate, something that was always just a complete headache that we had to deal with, that finally back around like 2017 or so, they actually went into the South Carolina contracts and they changed the rules and the way that it spoke. They actually put a whole segment in there talking about foggy windows. Now you may be saying, well, what the heck is a foggy window? Well, in South Carolina, a lot of the windows, they're double pane, and in between the 2 panes of glass, they insert a gas. And over time, with our high humidity, saltwater air, a small crack may start to form in that seal between them, and if that happens, the gas will slowly evaporate out. Well, with the high humidity, you're gonna find that window over time to get fogged up, maybe even a little bit of moisture that gets in there, and people, well, it just looks ugly, and people would ask, I want that fixed. That doesn't look right, that doesn't look good. But the way it actually technically was considered, it was a cosmetic defect. Just like a ceramic tile in the kitchen where somebody dropped a pan once and put a little chip in it, or there was a settlement on a concrete slab and the tile that was on it had a crack in it. Those things would be considered a cosmetic defect and things that could not be taken care of. The other part that caused a lot of confusion and problems is that when a home inspector goes in and does the inspection of a home, they're going to mark down any and everything. They're going to share defects. They're also going to share maintenance items that need to be taken care of as you as the current homeowner. Well, in the old contracts, the way things were written, people would try to ask for maintenance items, cosmetic defects, as well as the contractual defects of a property. So what happened then over time is South Carolina started to wise up a little bit and they started to give other options, other ways to handle this segment of the contract. Fast forward a few years. We then get to the contract that was what was in place up until June 13th of this year, 2022, which gave 3 options on how the repair segment of a contract and inspections were supposed to be handled. You could either, 1, use the repair procedure, which is what most people did because, hey, it's what we're comfortable with. It's what we're used to doing. So why, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Just stick to it. Then you had the second way that people were buying homes, which with the change in the market became extremely popular, especially in times when you have multiple offer situations, people in bidding wars trying to win. People were buying homes as is to make their offer stand out from the competition. And so we had a lot of people buying as is. Well, that's great for a seller, but you as the buyer was taking on all of the risk. If you had an inspection done after an as-is contract was signed and it came back saying, hey, you need a new roof for $15,000, you as the buyer are on the hook to buy that home and put the $15,000 roof on after the fact. The sellers, they have no obligation to anything. And then the third segment, which has become now the only option here in South Carolina, is called due diligence. Now, what the heck is due diligence? How does it work? Well, let me kind of try to break this down and simplify it as best I can. So in a due diligence contract, you as the buyer have the ability to have any and all inspections you want done just like you were before. But the big change is that the main 5 components, that disappeared. It went away. So buyers could now have free rein to ask for any and all repairs that they want done on a contract. At the same time, while it goes away for the buyers to ask for everything, it also disappeared for sellers, meaning sellers no longer were required to fix any and all repairs. They could do whatever they wanted to. And as my broker says, a no response from a seller is the same as getting a response of no. If they don't respond back saying anything, they're basically saying, we're not doing anything, and you need to make decisions as the buyer. So in the due diligence contract versus repair, you get out of the contract, buyer and seller, they both have to agree to release the contract, give the earnest money to somebody, and the deal falls apart. Due diligence, which is the new way now, the buyer can unilaterally end the contract by doing a termination letter and sending a termination fee. In your contract, you have a termination date. As long as you have sent the termination letter as well as the termination fee by that date, you as the buyer can unilaterally end the contract and go on your way. So that's a huge, huge change from the way things used to be in the past. In the past, sellers could basically hold you on the hook and say, no, you can't just get out of this. And no, if you're wanting to get out, I'm going to take your earnest money because you're trying to be ridiculous and ask for a light bulb to be repaired, which is, a $3 item. Or maybe something like, oh, you're asking for something not in the contract. I recently had a deal, which this might help make this whole thing a lot better. But I had a deal recently that went south and it was under the old repair procedure. And so let me take a couple minutes and kind of explain what happened in this situation. And then I'm going to go back through it with the way the deal would have been handled if it was under the new due diligence. So my buyers, they were here. One of them was in town. The other one was home in California. The wife was here. We went and looked at the house. She did a FaceTime with her husband. We walked through. He looked at it. He said, great house. I love the amenities. I love the way the area looks. Let's buy it. And so we wrote the offer. They had the home inspection done, and the house was used as a rental property before they were writing their offer. So the tenants that were there, they don't take care of a home, as you know, as well as you as your homeowner are going to take care of it. So what happened? The house had a lot of maintenance items that popped up, as well as several things that were on the defect item list as well. And so when I called the buyer to go over the list, he said, well, Jeremy, I didn't know that there was a stain on the ceiling from them not changing the air filter and the water pan going over. I want that fixed. And I said, sorry, that's a cosmetic defect. That's a maintenance item. There's no active moisture there right now, so there's nothing we can ask to be repaired. He said, well, Jeremy, there's also a crack in the drywall in the laundry room. We want that fixed. I said, once again, that's a cosmetic defect, not something that would be covered. So he said, okay, I want all the defects on it and I want all the maintenance items put on to the repair addendum. My job as the buying agent is to take care of those things and do what my client wants. So I added all the things, got him to sign it, sent it off to the seller. Of course, as soon as the seller got the list, they said, we're contractually obligated to take care of this, and this, not that one, not that one, not that one. And they crossed off a whole bunch of things and sent it back and said, we'll do these items and not that. He said, but I want those things done. I said, they're not contractually obligated to do it. He said, well, I don't want the house. There's too much stuff that needs to be done. There's too much work and too much maintenance to be done, and I don't want to spend all that money. So I went out of the deal. I said, well, the only way to be released from the deal is to sign a release of agreement, and unfortunately, you're probably going to have to give up your earnest money. He said, okay, whatever. So he gave up $2,000 in this situation to get out of the contract. Now, on the other side, the seller had already started to do all these repairs that they were contractually obligated to do at the time. And they started to spend out probably $2,000, $3,000 to get everything fixed up that would have needed to be done under old contract. Now, if this was on a new contract, here's the way things would have been done. We would have put in there a due diligence period of probably 7 to 10 days to give my buyer time to go get the house inspections done, put together their list of items that they would like repaired. We would have sent the list over to the seller, and the seller would probably have said at that time, I'm not doing anything, because they don't live in town. They didn't have money to do it. They sold the house for a good price already, and they felt they were being nickeled and dimed on the house already. And they said, we're not doing anything, and would have walked away. Then my buyer at that point would have been responsible to either pay the termination fee and send the letter of termination, which would have been maybe 0 to 500 or more, and they would have sent those two things over, and the contract would have been done. The seller would have put the house back on the market, sold it the next day to somebody else, and my buyer would have moved on to another home. It would have been a much cleaner and smoother situation all around. But because it was under the old, it caused a lot of headache. So these changes, yes, they're huge. They're very different from the way it used to be, but in the long run, it makes things a little bit smoother and easier for all parties. And ultimately, at the end of the day, both the buyer and the seller are trying to do the same thing. One is trying to buy a house, one is trying to sell a house. Both parties are going to work together to get things to the closing table and finish. Okay, so let me give a couple highlights of these changes. First off, in a new due diligence period, a buyer can unilaterally cancel the contract with a termination and a termination fee. At the same time, a seller is no longer required to do any repairs. And then the third thing that's super important, and this is where having a good agent like myself is going to be crucial for you in purchasing a property, is this. In the due diligence period of the contract, if we have it set for tomorrow as the date that it ends, at 6 p.m. tomorrow night, if I have not served up a termination letter, or we do not have a fully agreed upon repair addendum between both sides, signed, sealed, delivered, the buyer is ultimately stating at that point in time that they are purchasing the property as is. Yeah, as is. So it's super important that when you're doing this deal, you have an agent that pays attention to those timelines and pays attention to where your money is and how it works. If it turns to 6:01 p.m. and the termination fee and the letter is not in possession of the seller, you are technically buying a house as is, and you're going to be on the hook then, and could probably end up losing your earnest money as well. So pay attention to those times, pay attention to those dates, and make sure that you work with somebody who knows what they're doing. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video where we talk about these changes. Like I said, it's a big change to our contracts, but hopefully it give you guys a little bit of information on it. You understand it a little better now. If you have more questions, my email's down below. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'd love to work with you and help you and explain it more if I can. And as always, if you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, get the bell on, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.